Hello, havoc wreakers, and welcome back to our little dose of hope every week. If you're just joining us, I'm Lauren Shippen, creator of 2000 and Late, and in an effort to balance out all the shitty stuff the audio drama tackles, I talked with some incredible artists, creators, and activists who are grappling with our twisted reality and doing hella cool stuff to counteract the bad. This week, I'm speaking with Marisa Torelli-Pedevska, co-founder of the Inevitable Foundation. Inevitable is an extremely cool organization all about elevating disabled writers in Hollywood. Marisa and I talked about disability, why representation is important, how chronic illness can affect your creativity, and how inevitable success would mean the foundation ceasing to exist. Okay, so first off, Marisa, walk me through what the Inevitable Foundation is and how it started.
Yeah. So I laugh a little bit because it's been such a journey, like not just starting Inevitable, but like how Inevitable came to be like years kind of before it even started. And I can talk a little bit about both of those.
Please, yeah.
But yeah, it's a little bit of a saga. But at Inevitable, we invest in disabled writers and filmmakers. And we do that in a lot of different ways, but that like remains our goal no matter how we're doing it or what we're doing. And I'm a disabled writer myself. So that is not only my connection to the work, but also kind of the why behind how it started. And it's interesting because when I tell people about the work, someone who like doesn't know me that well, their initial thought is that the reason I do this work is because I spent almost a decade living and working at a sleepaway camp for teens and adults with developmental disabilities. Huge part of my life,
nice.
Big part of my background, deeply connected to like the why of everything that I do. It's how I met Richie, my co-founder, who's also my husband.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So like this camp and my story at this camp is like really embedded into everything in my life, work, personal, all of it. And a lot of my conversations when I talk about the foundation for the first time with people is explaining to them that like, no, like my connection to the work is my experience as a disabled person. It's not working with people who have disabilities, which I did for many years before my disability actually progressed and I became quote disabled. Like, I mean, I am disabled. I say the quote because I've always been disabled, but when I was younger, my symptoms were pretty mild. And so I did not identify as a person with a disability until I was an adult. But I say all of that just to say like my connection to the work is me, my experience. And that's a conversation that I have a lot because disability shows up in my life in all these kind of different fun ways. But we started in 2021. We kind of had the idea in 2020. And it was exactly at the same time where my chronic illness and my disability was like really changing. And I was getting my MFA at USC at the time. I was kind of like in the middle of my MFA at USC. It was also like the height of COVID. It was a super like weird time, like being quarantined, but then my disability is getting like pretty bad. And like, I'm in the middle of grad school on Zoom. It was just a super,
oh my God,
bizarre time, but like it was for everybody in their own way. And I think, at the time I was studying TV writing and screenwriting, and I was thinking like, how am I going to do this? Like, how am I going to work as a writer? How am I going to be in a writer's room? How am I going to be either a PA or a writer's assistant or all these jobs that are physical or long hours or, you can't really get a day off or take a day off when you're sick or when you have a flare up or whatever it may be. Like it just seemed really hard to envision at the time. And that was kind of scary because I was like, this is what I want to do. This is like what I'm working towards. And I don't actually know what it looks like to do that successfully in my body. And at the time I started researching and looking up like other writers and filmmakers that had disabilities that were like thriving in the industry, not just like working in the industry, not just like, at the lower levels of a writer's room, but like really having decision-making power, having this whole career. And there were not a lot. Shocker, like not a lot.
Yeah.
And that was, again, scary. And so Richie and I had all these
Yeah.
conversations around that. And we said, like, how do we support this community? Like, what can we do to change this? And it sounded kind of like wild at the time. We're like, okay, how are we going to like work to change this really big problem? But I think just with my own experience and seeing things that I needed at the time, which were like rest, space, and resources to just like work on my writing, accommodations, like all these different kind of simple things. I mean, the finance part is not like super simple to find money to give to people, but other than that, like not super hard things. So we started the foundation, and we started really with a program. Like before the foundation was the foundation, it was like basically a program. It was a writing program where we gave out a grant. It's a $40,000 grant to a writer to basically just like have time to work on their writing and to have support from us, from our team, from our community, from the other writers in their cohort. We give them mentorship, not from us, but from people that sign up to mentor them. And I think between, the money, which was a big part of it, just like how can we get financial resources to this community, because it costs so much money to be disabled, depending on what your disability is, whether it's physical therapy or hospital stays or whatever. Like it costs money and it costs time. And those are things that like as a writer and like being in this industry, you're not really like given, right? You're not given a lot of like extra time or extra money to spend on the things you need to survive. So yeah, we started with this one program, and that was 4 years ago, and now it's changed a lot. But yeah, that's kind of the origin story, I guess.
That's amazing. I'm curious why Inevitable Foundation. Where did the name come from?
Yeah, I like that question because we were coming up with a name for a little while, and we really wanted the word able to be in there. It's very subtle. Like people don't realize it when they look at the word.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
And that's a good thing. Like we wanted something that was subtle. Inevitable's a word in itself. So it's not the first thing you think of, but also we really wanted a word that had like momentum, like forward momentum, this feeling of like, this is going to happen with or without you. This change is going to happen with or without you. So like jump on the train with us. Like this is inevitable. And that's how we got the name.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, but before you started, I mean, yeah, you said that you were kind of looking to find, someone further along in their career that you could look up to, that you could, potentially follow in their footsteps, and didn't find anybody, which is not a surprise, I think, to me or probably anybody who's listening to this, because Hollywood famously has not been a particularly diverse place in any metric. But in terms of folks kind of in your community of writers, do you feel like you've always had a community of other disabled writers around you, or is it something that's really blossomed since starting Inevitable Foundation?
Yeah, no, I did not even really know another disabled writer at the time that we started. Like maybe one or two other people with like different chronic illnesses, but no, I didn't really know. It was so isolating to think like, I mean, I knew obviously logically I wasn't the only disabled writer out there. Like I probably wasn't even the only disabled writer in my school, but it felt that way. Like when you don't have a community. And now most of the writers that I know have a disability, just like from all the work that we do. And it's so cool. Like it's the coolest part of this work to look around, or I mean, not like literally look around because I'm in my bedroom, but like, so like look around the Zoom room and be like, wow, everyone here has a disability. Everyone here has like a different disability. But like we're out there, like we're all out there.
Yeah, were there more people kind of ready to hop onto this and sort of say, oh, yes, this is my experience, I also feel this way, than you expected? Or was it like just affirming what you already knew to be true, which is that, of course, there are lots of other disabled writers?
Both. I think some disabled writers like already knew other disabled writers, Maybe not to the extent that they do now, because the programs really bring a lot of different people together that never would have met otherwise. We're also a remote, like fully remote program. All of our programs are, except for our direction program, which I could talk about later. And so people are meeting each other who live across the country from each other. Not everyone's actually in LA. But yeah, I do think overall, like, most people would say that their network of other disabled writers has really grown. I also think, like, a lot of the people that come into our programs, or most of the people that come into our programs, are people who have identified as disabled for like most of their life, if not their whole life, and are very like strong in that identity. And like that's a place that I find like I've gotten to now. But when I started Inevitable, like it was actually pretty new for me. I identified as chronically ill for a long time, but to me, for some reason in my mind, and it's probably just because I didn't know other disabled folks, but in my mind, like chronic illness was like its own bucket, its own thing, like not really disability. And then like obviously as I started doing this work more and more, I was like, oh yeah, like it's just a part of the community, but it's so in the community. So I was in like a weird place in my own personal journey with my disability when I started, and that's really grown like in parallel with the org, which is really cool.
If you're willing, I'd love to hear kind of more about that and what you feel changed in your perspective if you, view sort of chronically ill, chronic pain, disability as different things or is all part of the same umbrella. If you're willing to expand on that. Was it just the fact that you were interacting with more disabled writers and you kind of had a deeper understanding for your own disability, or was there another element that kind of helped you come into that identity?
Yeah, so I mean, I can say a little bit about kind of my experience. I've had like maybe a similar experience to a lot of people with chronic illness, because I feel like in retrospect, people will like look back on their lives and their childhoods and be like, oh, like that's where this thing came from, or like that's why I was missing school, or whatever it may be. Like you realize that you always had this thing, but maybe it didn't show up in the way that it presents as an adult. But I have a connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. You're nodding, so I assume you maybe have heard of it.
I have a couple of close collaborators of mine through the years that have had that.
Yeah, it's a really weird disability to have. It's like a very mysterious one. There's not like a ton known about it, which also means there's like not a ton to do like treatment wise. It's more of like a management. Like, how do you manage it? How do you manage symptoms? How do you prevent injury? And I also have POTS syndrome. And those go hands in hand most of the time. A lot of people with EDS have POTS. But growing up, I had like a lot of weird illnesses. Like, as a kid, I mean, this wasn't even an illness, but as a kid, I slept like literally so much. Like, I would have sleepovers at friends' houses, and like their parents would struggle to even like wake me up, and it was like 2 p.m. and I was just always sleeping, always tired. And it didn't really like ring a bell until later, because I got sick a lot in high school, like strep, like constant weird infections that like were just so random. Like everyone's like, where's Mercy getting these infections? Why is she missing school? And I didn't even like know what was going on. I didn't know I had EDS at the time. I didn't get diagnosed with EDS until I was in my early mid-20s. And then in college, the subluxation started. And that was like the start of really having EDS. And like my joints started partially dislocating. I was having a lot of chronic pain, muscle spasms, like a lot of joint issues that became like more and more chronic. And then like about 5 years ago, I'd say, like that's when it really like all blew up. And the chronic pain and the partial dislocations became like pretty daily. And then the past year and a half has been like particularly debilitating, just with like, again, a lot of like pretty bad subluxations. But on like an emotional level, the journey has been kind of like a lonely one for a long time. Not so much anymore, because I do feel like I know so many more disabled people now. But for a long time, like not knowing other people with chronic illnesses, whether it was like high school, college, grad school, like you just feel like you're the only person living with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I fought against it for a long time mentally. And like this weaves into the creativity question that you asked, like, how does it affect your creativity? And I think maybe up until like 2 years ago, a year ago, like not even that long ago, I could feel myself just like resenting my body so much of the time. And like I still have those days of like just being so frustrated. Why can my body do this? Why can my body do that? But it's so much less than it used to be. It's more flipping that mindset every day, thinking like, wow, my body can do XYZ. My body can do all these incredible things. And like, yeah, it's in pain a lot. Yeah, I can't do these other things, but it can still do a lot. And
yeah,
I think with creativity, I mean, it's one forced me to like slow down a lot. I think if I did not have chronic pain, like I'm in pain right now. I'm like shifting around a lot because like I have pain in my rib. But if I did not have chronic pain or like chronic fatigue or any of the stuff, like I probably would just push myself, like go, go, go all the time. And you have a lot of time with yourself when you have a chronic illness, when you have a disability that causes you to like be in bed a lot or like rest a lot. You're just like forced to be with yourself and get to know yourself a lot. And that also impacts your writing, your creativity, your patience with yourself. And I don't know, I feel like I am just more in partnership with my body these days than I've been in the past. We're not like two separate entities like fighting against each other as much as like we're getting through it together. We're doing it together. And I also feel like a really big mindset shift that's affected my creativity is this idea, and we all have it, that like once things are different, my life will be better. Or like once, like for example, like once I have more money, I will be happier. Once I'm in less pain, I will finally do XYZ. Then I will start living my life. Once I have that promotion, then I will be like fulfilled, whatever. Like it applies to everybody. It's not just, what I'm talking about. But I think for me, for a long time, again, not until not that recently, I would say to myself, like, okay, when I subluxe less, I'm going to go on that trip. Or when I am in less pain, I'm finally going to get it together to like go write that project or whatever it may be. And then that day doesn't come and you're like, this is just life. Like, this is just my life. And if I'm waiting for that day to come, I'm never going to do the things I want to do in my life. And yeah, that's been a huge mindset shift for me of like not waiting till things are quote better, not till I'm healthier, not till I'm in less pain, and like doing it while I'm living in this body.
Right. I mean, I think that that's kind of aligned with what you were saying about being in partnership with your body, right? Around it's not about what you can't do, it's about what you can do and learning to appreciate that. In the same way, figuring out the things that you want to do, and then I imagine finding ways that you can do them, with your current circumstances, not some sort of imagined future in which there are no problems anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of us think that way, or maybe literally everyone thinks that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of it as it's the video game inventory problem in my head, because that's how I always think of it, which is like oftentimes if I'm playing a video game and I get like a really good like a possession or potion or something, I'll save it until the big boss fight, and then I don't need it anymore because I'm totally leveled up. And it's like, no, I should use it when I need it, and I should appreciate the good things when I have it. I play probably too many video games. That's probably why I think of it like that. But, I think about that even with little stuff of like, oh, that nice, hand cream that my mom got me for Christmas that I, only use sometimes because it's so nice. It's like, no,
I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah. Like,
it's so
use
true.
it while you have it.
Yeah, people do that with candles.
Yes, totally.
I'm not going to light the candle. I'm not going to use the candle until like this special moment. And then they have this candle for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah, you know, you don't use your wedding china except for on special occasions, but then you never use it. And like, I think that
Yeah.
there are so many things, and obviously those are all, you know, around material things, but I do think that that mindset is that scarcity mindset, I think is incredibly common. And yeah, I really resonate with everything that you just said. I think the idea of being in partnership with your body is a really lovely way of thinking about it because though I don't as much anymore, I also struggle with some chronic pain as a result of a strep infection, actually, that went very weird and resulted in scarlet fever and this thing called Lemire syndrome. And like, it was a whole thing. But, you know, the one thing that it gave me is that it forced me to slow down. It was 2015. I was 24 years old. All of a sudden, I couldn't really walk around, and I was on bed rest for a long time, and that's when I started my first podcast. And it's a podcast that I'd been wanting to start for a year, and then all of a sudden I was sort of trapped in my own body in my own apartment by myself with my thoughts, and ended up writing a story about my panic attacks, which is something I'd been dealing with for a long time. And now this current story that I've written, 2000 and Late, is sort of dealing with the many years of chronic pain that I had as a result of that. And so it's like, it's interesting because I feel like I'm on a little bit of a delay of like dealing with the things that made me feel trapped in my body. But and I find that I'm always a little bit surprised when like something kind of comes out in my writing that I didn't expect. Do you experience that as well? Like, do you ever write directly about your disability in your writing? Do you ever do it purposefully? Do you ever do it in a way that is surprising to you? Or are the two kind of, you know, separate in your head?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like with Inevitable and like how much I talk about disability representation in general, you'd think that like everything that I write has disability or has my disability in it, and it doesn't. I mean, there's disability in actually almost everything that I've ever written, but not my disability. I am still trying to figure out how I want to write about my disability. I think it can be a hard one to write into a story because it's not visible, right? Like, you can only write about it if you're literally writing about it. Whereas like if someone who uses a wheelchair exists in a story, like the story doesn't have to be about their disability, but you know they have a disability because it's visible. But for me, if I don't write about it, it is invisible. There's no way to know that this person or character has a disability unless you literally start talking about it and make the story about it. And so it can be a little bit trickier. But I don't know. I've been less interested in writing about my disability, and I think more interested. I've always been more interested in writing about the disabilities of the people in my life, and that's probably just because you write about people in your life, and
Totally.
that has always made sense to me. And because of all the years that I spent working at that camp, and also just to like kind of close the loop on how that came to be with Inevitable, I met Richie because Richie's sister was a camper of mine at the camp that I worked at. And she has developmental disability and epilepsy, and is like the most important person in our lives. And so I write a lot about characters with developmental disabilities, or they are like in a lot of the stories that I write, because that is something that I've always been really passionate about including in my writing, like filling out the world with people with a range of developmental disabilities, because that's what my world looks like.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. And I think that it's something that, we're seeing more and more of in TV and film, but certainly not at the level that is representative of the world. And I'd love to talk a little bit about representation on, TV and in movies, because I think that seems to be a huge part of the awareness campaign that Inevitable is doing. And I imagine, most of the writers that you're working with are working in TV and film. Why do you think it's important that representation does exist in TV and film? And specifically, why is it important that disabled writers get to write their own stories?
I mean, it's wild that like 1 in 4 people have some kind of disability, and then you like turn on the TV or go to the movies and just like no one. It's like, right. I don't know, when you live with a disability and when you live or you exist in a community with a lot of people with disabilities, it's so bizarre to just, again, turn on the TV, go to the movies, and like have the stories pretend like this community just doesn't exist.
Right.
It's like the largest minority group in America, but I mean, it's important because, I mean, especially like in front of the camera, actors and characters, like it's important because we have to see ourselves. I'd say behind the camera is important because we need the power to tell our own stories. And I think that can look a lot of different ways. But if we only ever have non-disabled people telling stories about disability, we're only getting like this far. We're only getting so far. And I think, you know, where we've been at for a long time, and it's like kind of, it's still progress and it's still like getting to where we want to be, but we've kind of been in that middle area where it's a lot of like parents telling stories of being a parent to someone with a disability, or a sibling telling a story of what it's like to be a sibling to someone with a disability, and not having that experience over here, the disabled person actually being like the one that's centered, not having that character be the one that's centered, but like part of someone else's journey or like emotional arc, or like there to teach a lesson, or, you know, whatever it may be. And so we're kind of in that middle space right now where we see a lot of that. But then there's also stuff that's like doing it really well. I mean, we got Peanut Butter Falcon. I don't know if you've seen Peanut Butter Falcon, but it's like,
I haven't seen it. I'm familiar with it, but I haven't seen it.
It's one of my favorite films. The actor Zach who's in that is just incredible, and like it's his story. Like he's the one that's centered. It's not about him changing somebody else. It's about him and like him living his life, him learning a lesson, him going through all these obstacles. Yeah, it's I think a great example of representation. And he's not a writer on the film, but he was, I think, involved in like the improv of the storytelling and the way that lines were delivered, and like did have quite a big part in developing that character. And also the character was written for him specifically. Yeah, and then you have stuff like A Quiet Place, which is like such a good example. And we talk about it all the time because and this is actually a good example of the kind of stuff that we want to do later on, like making stuff in terms of, you know, the studio arm that we now have. But that film, it's not about being deaf. Being deaf is not the conflict. It's not the obstacle. It's not the thing to overcome. She's just deaf and she uses ASL. And if you took the ASL out of the film, if you took the deaf character out of the film, like it's a different movie. It's a totally different story. Right. And like the whole concept kind of falls apart, but it's not about that. And I think like that is such a great example of representation that we want to see, right? It's like core to the premise, but it's not the conflict. It's not a story about getting a diagnosis or about overcoming her disability or whatever it may be. She's just existing, and that family is just existing, and the conflict's like this totally other thing over here.
Yeah, and it really does feel like there are inroads being made, and that, you know, we're starting to see more stuff like that in the same way that, you know, we eventually started to see queer stories about, you know, that weren't just about coming out or weren't just about, you know, the difficulties of being queer. And I think that there's always that like cycle that Hollywood seems to go through. And I ask that question because I think that it is a question that, you know, I imagine you encounter a lot of, like, why is this important? Why, you know, why, you know, is this something that Hollywood should make an effort toward, which is absurd because that's been the question for a bunch of different groups through Hollywood's history. And the question every time is like, well, because everyone deserves to see themselves in stories and everybody deserves to contribute to their own stories. And I mean, I think in making those inroads and I imagine encountering that question over and over again, do you feel like, you know, even just since Inevitable's founding, that you've, you know, really made progress around awareness and in the conversations that you're having? Have you seen any change in the last, you know, 5 or 6 years around all of that stuff?
Yeah, I do think so. I think it's a slow, I mean, you know how long it takes to like develop something and then get it made and get it out into
Yeah.
the world. Like it's a process and we've only been around for 4 years. So like
Yeah.
in the lifetime of like a project in the industry, that's quite small. Um
Yeah, that's like contracts and a pilot script, maybe.
for real. But I do think so. And I can talk about it a little bit like maybe on the program side first. Like
Yeah,
I
please.
think we have this one fellow in our directing program um, who started off in our writing program, and I think she's such a exciting example of like the journey of the org and also like how there can be such synergy between the programs.
Mm.
She is a writer. She started off in our writing fellowship a few years ago, and in the fellowship, she developed this really fun sister comedy script. And then later on, I don't know if it was a year or 2 years later, applied for our first filmmaking directing fellowship because she was interested in directing. And there, not a lot of disabled directors.
Yeah.
And she took what she learned in the writing fellowship, she took the story that she wrote and got excited about, and applied to the fellowship so that she could make her first short and that she can make a short version of the feature, which is part of the
Mm-hmm.
directing fellowship. So just to give you a little context, we started that program because we noticed that the hardest part of the process for people, like they would have a feature, but then going from having a feature script to actually directing their first feature, like that was a huge jump, right? It's really hard to get someone
Yeah.
it's really hard to convince someone that you are ready to direct a feature.
Yeah.
And so we thought, like, why don't we help people direct their first short? That's a short version of the feature that they want to direct to show that they can direct and show what they can do. And then in the second half of the program, after they make the short, they work on revising their feature script and getting it to a place where they can really send it out as a package. Here's my short, here's my feature, look what I can
Mm-hmm.
do as a writer and as a director. And so she applied with that script, ended up making her short, which is in post right now, and is developing the feature again and like rewriting it and getting it to a place where she can share it with people. But this was all from like years of being in two different programs. And
Right.
I think getting to see that journey and see like how someone can go from one program to another and like go from not even having this script at all, it's just an idea, to having a feature, directing her first short, like sending this out as a package. Like it's been so exciting to see that happen. And I don't even think that answers your question, but that was the first thing that popped into my head when you asked that question.
No,
Uh,
I think that's amazing.
um, but yes, I do think that there has been progress. I do think that there has been some change. We have another fellow who has written on a bunch of shows since she's been in the fellowship. She's actually one of our first fellows. And she has been able to write a disabled character into almost, if not every single show she's been on, almost every single show she's been on. And it doesn't
That's
mean that it's a
incredible.
main character. Obviously, she's not like
Sure.
adding in another main character, but it could be just a character in one episode or a character with like a 3 episode arc. And so even if like we're getting more disabled people on screen who are like the friend or the side character or whatever, like I think we are getting more people on screen. We're getting more people in the writer's room, but still, it's still minimal, right? It's still not
Yeah.
anywhere where it should be.
Yeah. How many people are in your programs in any given year?
So I feel like the answer to that would be very different for our first year compared to now, because every year
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like now.
it's grown so much. Um, an exact number, I don't have an exact number because we've had the Accelerate Fellowship, which is our writing fellowship, the Visionary Fellowship, which is our directing fellowship. We've had Elevate, which is kind of our um, like lower support, lower involvement writing program where
Mm.
people, if like for example, if somebody needs a new desk setup or someone needs money for some kind of career coaching, like that's where you would apply for that program versus the Accelerate Fellowship that's like if you want to spend 6 months on a single project, and just work on that project and be part of that bigger program, that's where you apply for that. But then we also have our emergency relief fund, which is something that, especially after the fires and during the strikes, really kicked up. And that, is still a program. And a lot of people were given smaller grants through that. So I don't want to give you an incorrect exact number, but we, through everything, have probably supported over 100 people this past year.
That's incredible.
And the emergency relief fund definitely like hikes that number up just because, of everything that's been going on the past couple of years.
Yeah, but I mean that's huge, and yeah, I was gonna ask you about the strike and sort of how you feel that affected Inevitable's work, if it did. I mean, I think it kind of affected all of us in various ways, but it has been a strange few years for the industry, to say the least. And so I imagine it's been interesting to be starting this project during this time. Have there been challenges that you have faced that you didn't expect? And, what have been some challenges that Inevitable's navigated that you're like particularly proud of how you guys navigated it?
Yeah, I'd say, going back to the strike, something that we were really passionate, or are really passionate about, not past tense, but especially at the time of the strike, is making sure that the disabled people were not forgotten when all of this quote passed, that they were involved in every part of the process. And even during the actual strike, when people were, picketing's not always accessible. Like, people don't talk about that.
Yeah.
But if someone, like me, has POTS or like heat sensitivity, being out in the 100-degree weather, sun, not easy, right? Like, that could be dangerous. Maybe you're picketing on a sidewalk that's not accessible for a wheelchair to get onto. There's so many different like ways that picketing might not be accessible, but we really tried to change that during the strikes, and we brought out accessible bathrooms so that people could use the bathroom. We brought out waters. We brought out seating, which was a big one. Like, people needed to sit down. People needed to rest.
Yeah.
And, a lot of disabled people can't picket for hours on end walking around the block. Like, they need some chairs. I needed some chairs. And so we really tried to make it a community effort, get a lot of people in our programs together to bring some attention to that. We also had a billboard campaign that I'm really proud of. And I'm really proud of the way that we pivoted, because we had a Hire Disabled Writers campaign that was on billboards. And when the strike hit, like, Hire Disabled Writers didn't like fully like make sense anymore because no one was getting hired.
No one's hiring anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we pivoted to making sure like the campaign was around disabled people not being left out of those conversations. And so, yeah, I think we've had to pivot a lot throughout the past 4 years.
Yeah.
Whether it was the strikes, whether it was the fires, like, but we've done it.
No kidding. That's remarkable. And I think also it's such a good sort of microcosm of, I think, how, resistance and progress and protest work on a macro level, which is that involving everybody is going to look like making this accommodation, making that accommodation, and also, knowing that like maybe the way that you were, contributing to the strike isn't going out in 100-degree weather and, picketing. Maybe it's something else. And I think that so often, especially with something that's like very like public and on the news, like a strike, people kind of forget that there's a million different ways to contribute to that effort. And, I think especially being part of the conversations around the contracts is something that I'm really curious about in terms of, every couple of years, both the WGA and SAG negotiate their contracts. Sometimes it leads to a strike, sometimes it doesn't. And there's always a million different things that, we're trying to get into this or that contract to fix this or that problem or prevent this or that issue, like with AI. And, we're never going to get everything all at once. But in terms of using organizations like the WGA and SAG to make those inroads for disabled writers and directors and actors, obviously directors would be the DGA, is that a conversation that you're having with those unions? Is it something that you're hoping to have to potentially make contractual language around making sure that, you know, the hours of a writer's room are flexible, or that, you know, there is more accessibility in various ways for each job?
Yeah, we're not like indirect we're not having those direct conversations with those unions, but those are things that we want to change and conversations that we want to have. Yeah, but they're not conversations that we're currently having.
Yeah. I mean, more broadly, what is the hope and sort of short-term goals and long-term goals of Inevitable? Mm-hmm. That's not too big of a question to ask.
No, not at all. Not too big of a question. I mean, long-term, I guess I can answer that first. Long-term. Long term, we don't want to exist. Like, that is the goal. We always say that. We want to implode, like, we, you know, hopefully 10, 20, 30 years. There's no inevitable, because we don't need to solve this problem. I think, like, medium term, really seeing an environment and industry where there are disabled people in decision-making positions. There are disabled people hiring people with this, hiring power. Like, that's something that we think about a lot. Not just getting disabled people into the rooms, but like being the person at the top of the room who's inviting other disabled people into the space. Because I think if you have someone at the top who has a disability, everything trickling down is going to take accessibility into account.
Right.
And it's not going to be an afterthought. I think shorter term, we're really excited about developing projects. It's a little bit separate from the foundation, but we're starting to develop projects by disabled writers and filmmakers through Inevitable Studios, which is another arm of Inevitable Foundation that we announced in July. And the hope there is to just get disabled stories into the mainstream, whether it's comedy, horror, whatever it may be, and find those stories like A Quiet Place that have disability so at the center of the story, not about disability, but so at the center of the story that you cannot just take it out. Like, it's really important to the core of the character, what they're going through. But again, not like a overcoming story, not a diagnosis story. And just like getting to show people that this stuff can be commercial. Like, this stuff can be, something that everybody loves. It doesn't have to be this niche story over there. It can be something that everyone relates to. And we're really excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you could speak a little on the studio, because I mean, the fact that you guys have existed for 4 years and you've already launched the studio is like remarkable to me. How did that come about, and what are you most excited about with it?
Yeah, we've wanted to do something like this for a long time. When we first started the foundation, like 4.5 years ago, we actually thought about like starting a production company right out of the gate for disabled stories. And a lot of very smart people were like, don't do that. Like, you need to work a little in this industry before you go try and do that. So we rethought the way, like, how can we kind of like still do what we want to do and get more disabled people working in the industry, but do it from like a different standpoint. So we did it more from a workforce standpoint and decided to start the nonprofit to support specifically the creators. And, that's how we got the foundation as it is. But we still always really wanted to support projects, support people, but also support their projects and be involved in the development of their projects. That was always really exciting to us. And so it feels like it's something that's been a long time coming. I think over the past 4.5 years, we've worked with so many incredible disabled writers / also filmmakers through our programs that now we have all these people we want to work with, like on this other level, not just like in a fellowship capacity, but, you know, in a let's make something together capacity. And it's very new, but we do have a few very early stage like projects that we're circling and excited about, and fingers crossed that they move forward and that we can help these people make their stuff.
Any of your own projects on that slate? I mean, how's your own writing going?
No. That is, that would be wild. No, my own, my own writing has always been very separate from, like anything Inevitable related.
Sure.
And, you know, we started Inevitable while I was in the middle of grad school. And so since grad school, it's been something that I've, been working on consistently, Inevitable, but also my writing. And then for a while after grad school, I was doing both Inevitable, and then I had the incredible opportunity to work for a showrunner and a writer that I really love, and it was a dream to have that job and get to see actually like what the inside of that part of the process is like. That's awesome. So still writing, still pursuing that like in parallel, but they're not like.
They're not crossing.
No, they're not crossing.
And finally, what's another organization or figure or even a piece of art that is giving you a lot of hope for the future?
Yeah.
Either around disability or just around, you know, just our general state of the world at the moment.
Yeah, I would say, and she passed away a few years ago, but my answer to a question like that has consistently been Claire Wineland. I don't know if you're familiar with Claire Wineland. She created Claire's Place Foundation, and she had cystic fibrosis, and she passed away in 2018, I think. So already it was a couple of years ago, but she was somebody, I didn't know her personally. I followed her online for a long time, on Instagram, on YouTube. And she was someone that really shifted the way that I thought about disability for myself, for other people, and just like the way that I exist as a disabled person. She's the one that really got me to adopt that mindset of like the no waiting, the like, you know, if I wait until XYZ, I'm never going to do it. Like that was something that she talked about so often. And there's a wonderful documentary about her life called Claire that I highly recommend watching. I think it's on YouTube. But she started this organization called Claire's Place Foundation, and it's to support people with CF, to support their families, to cover expenses for them during hospital stays. They do so much incredible stuff. And it was like all her work. It wasn't like created after she passed. It was something that she had created herself. And I just think like anyone looking to rethink the way that they think about disability, it like should learn about Claire Wineland. She's just incredible.
Oh, I love that. I'll definitely make sure to put links to all of that in the show notes of this episode, as well as links to the Inevitable Foundation, because the work that you guys are doing is just amazing. And if folks want to support you, or even if there are some disabled writers, directors listening, you know, what's the best way that people can support you or get involved with what you do? Yeah,
I mean, I would say reach out to us. We're a small but mighty team. All that info is on our website. Follow us on Instagram to see what we're doing, to learn about new programs. We post a lot of stuff there. But we like to learn about what other people are doing. We like to connect with people. So I would say just reach out to us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Marisa, for taking the time to talk with me today. This was really, really wonderful. And
Thank you.
I'm just so excited to see what comes out of Inevitable in the next couple of years and beyond.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Hello, my little havoc wreakers. Harper's asleep at the moment, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to tell you about something I find wickedly entertaining. Josie's Lonely Hearts Club is a semi-scripted audio drama set in New Mexico's second-best relationship call-in show. On air, Josie Helen mends the broken hearts of a weekly collection of hilarious improvisers. Off air, listeners eavesdrop on the life of Josie's secret identity, hapless, neurotic Joanne Holtzinger. Next season is their soap opera season, featuring murders, twins, fake pregnancies, betrayals, and all the high-stakes drama that makes humanity worth keeping around. Speaking of humanity, this show features some of its best. Dropouts Ross Bryant, Had Apocalypse's Abigail Turner, Civilized Christy Bolton, Jesse Cannizzaro of Ley Lines, Kyle Prue, Hal Lublin and Mark Gagliardi from the Thrilling Adventure Hour, and James Urbaniak. And I've heard there might be a familiar voice on this next season. You'll laugh, you'll cry. It'll hit you right in that funny bone with its somewhat sexy and extremely silly vibes. Season 5 premiered June 4th. Join the club by subscribing and catch up on every episode wherever you get your podcasts. It comes out the first and third Wednesday of every month, so there's always something delicious to tune into. Enjoy! Hello, Havoc Wreakers. I've got a small but significant announcement. Lauren Shippen, the head of Atypical Artists and my personal meat puppet, will be doing a marathon live stream on Halloween from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific Time. Part of this live stream will involve a listening party for our grand Season 1 finale, which drops that day. So if you'd like to listen along with Lauren and other fans, go to harperandhavoc.com and sign up for updates. All right, back to our main program.